Footprints, Sovereignty, and Interstate 95. The water sublime and put here for our use. It is not hidden away, but appears abundantly on the surface. Other planets would want its presence because its existence offers us life, but the figurative footprints in the sand are missing. There is no one to carry us during our times of bad, because these times were not heaped on us by accident, but rather intended to facilitate our demise. How could anything so fragile be so damaged? The plankton oily, the coral corrupt. And even though the water appears lucid, it is only a charade, because the ocean floor was the final recipient of the oil spill. The tragedy that once had occurred above, orchestrated by BP, British Petroleum, along our American shores. And how devastating could one disaster be? There are enough deadly creatures living in the sea without us making the very food we eat also violent. How many millions of little sea creatures did BP kill? How many more dying can we expect? But never worry about the food you eat, because our government's food quality inspectors, our FDA, control the level of health concerns, establishing the rate of death dependent only on the economy. Your body will simply become the recycling method for the poisons now present in the sick and dying sea. Thank you, BP. We couldn't have reached our threshold of death without you. A voice is heard among the waves to crash our shores. Never again. The perusal continues in the west of an environmental world gone badly, where those that have seized custodial responsibility have failed miserably to protect our natural world. Defending the viability of the Sierras is not a club, and is not a charity if its resources are limited to a minority of people. Stewardships always have to balance the need for protection against the need for people to partake. There is no reason to save the forest for future generations, if even at that time our descendants cannot also partake. And then in our forests nationwide, where thousands and thousands of acres of woods have burned in forest fires, the soil has eroded with floods and landslides. Millions of creatures, big and small, have perished, their meat no longer meant for a table, their skin to wear, or even to view in their natural state. The crying and screaming of these frightened creatures in death overwhelm their fiery consummation. The pristine forest turned a dirty gray, which inadvertently turned away the hunters, the fishermen, and the selected members of our society, while the public, wishing only to experience nature, was never offered an opportunity. But pristine does not limit its description to our mountain ranges, but also describes our golden meadows, our prairies, which make up the inner parts of our America, where two separate instances of tornadoes touching the ground over a period of years showcased our lack of environmental resolve. Unfortunately, the citizens of Moore, Oklahoma, did not feel deserving of this recognition with two separate tornadoes years apart that could devastate the community. And the degree of destruction is not a kinship to a meteorological disaster with Joplin, Missouri, that people pray to partake. But the words they spoke out went to a higher power. Keep the intensity of our tornadoes to a minimum. We would rather share our children's future, quilting bees and harvest festivals. These people, though, did not know that their prayers were being misdirected, that their everyday lives were being dictated not by a higher power they sought, but rather by environmental skirmishes taking place in San Francisco, Dallas, Louisiana, and Massachusetts, by ideologues of the right and left, but neither side is right. Maybe hurricanes, tornadoes, and tsunamis are nature's tools for change, but when they destroy entire cities like Moore, Oklahoma, New Orleans, Louisiana, or Mantelocan, New Jersey, then we have to change our view and respect, because nature does not comply with laws enacted in Congress, and the president cannot veto a disaster. And though our domestic policies are doomed from the start, we decide instead to spread our wings internationally, but not in a positive manner where we can help another country in a time of crisis, but rather we assume a limited advisory role where we can prop up our own national determination by taking no position that would undermine another country's inalienable rights. Don't step on their toes as Fukushima nuclear power plant and the city of Sendai in Japan are experiencing two disasters in one day, when an earthquake sent a tsunami towering towards the Japanese shore, triggering the death of thousands in the city. The sudden surge of water also triggered a potential nuclear disaster that conceivably could have hurt the entire world. The world, though, opted to only watch, as the Fukushima nuclear power plant started their meltdowns, taking the position that it was not their concern. But this menace knows no borders, because when its core deteriorates, the explosions will go in all directions, and the radioactive cloud will flood the world's skies. Unfortunately for mankind, the world's governments thought it was not their place to offer help in squelching the disaster, because it was occurring in another sovereign country. What is the worst that can happen was that thousands of people would die instantly, while millions of others would die over a longer period of time. But the beginning of this disaster did not start until after the tsunami hit their shores and thousands died, while running away from the water or pulled directly into the current alive, as the water receded back into the sea. And the beginning of the tsunami did not occur until a portion of the ocean floor dropped, creating a massive earthquake and ocean swell. What, though, could make the ocean floor drop? Maybe the tectonic plates covering the Earth's inner core suddenly became weak. Maybe the pressure on them was eased to such an extent that it allowed them to break free of their carefully balanced restraints as they scatter in other directions. Fracking, which is deemed a convenient method of petroleum extraction, is utilized to break up the underground, releasing the gas confined there. But how much fracking is necessary to break loose one or more of these carefully designed plates, and could a chain reaction of release pressure reach the Sea of Japan? Sovereignty is only a word that dictates responsibility to a select few, allowing others to dismiss their own responsibility. But sovereignty cannot stop hate from crossing a border with soldiers or terrorists. It cannot stop diseases like Ebola or SARS or etc., and it cannot stop natural disasters such as floods or fire, and it definitely cannot stop the nuclear threat or the radioactive fallout that would ensue. Sovereignty does not stop the good and bad behavior of its people, or even protect the health and safety of the people from their sovereign. And the soldiers of the world cannot protect their country's citizens for climate change or disasters either. They can help by rescuing survivors, but sometimes during their assistance they have to account for the dead. People are dying in communities that don't drive cars, but solar technology did not save them either. So thank you Chevron, Shell, and other gasoline producers, as well as the liberal elite that believe solar is more an efficient energy and petroleum should be excluded. And because of the fact that the two of you refuse to work together, you have placed our world in crisis and placed the future of mankind in jeopardy. Don't just be the winner of the discussion, but be the solution. Work together or die. We return then to the southeast, where a huge snake slithers forward from the foliage on the rough terrain, rock or sandy, carrying its bulky cargo, a deer, slowly being digested in its cylindrical frame. This non-native reptile, deposited here on the outskirts of a swamp by a misguided parent, irresponsible zookeeper, or simply a terrorist wishing to bring a mighty country down. Didn't anyone read the story of the snake's role in the Garden of Eden? A creature only held to a territory by its warmth. But the world is changing. The cold parts are becoming hot, while the hot parts are becoming cold. This creature's confined area of existence is expanding, but no one looks upon its presence as a threat. The creature continues its journey back into the foliage, where it can continue to enjoy its prey. When suddenly a lightning bolt strikes the slithery reptile, scattering parts of the deer and snake across the beach. The thunder is then heard, but it is not signaling the conclusion of an atmospheric condition, but rather a new end to our existence. But where is a suitable site for the end to begin? So we will make it as simple as a rest area on the northern bound stretch of Interstate 95. But what could conspire here along a route paralleling the Atlantic Ocean that sets the stage for America's future and could make a difference in the way we live our lives? The route of travel which takes us on a portion of our interstate that reaches from the bowels of hell to the most sanctimonious region of our world, Washington D.C. And hell is the right word for the furthermost southern tip of Florida. If you can imagine driving down the state's panhandle from Panama City and view nature's electronic light show taking place in the pitch black, darkened skies over the Bahamas, over the Caribbean, over the Everglades or Key West. Then on to the darkness beyond our shores, where stories of the Bermuda Triangle take place, or the 1959 revolution in Cuba, or the subsequent Bay of Pigs, where all lost souls merge. The horror of voodoo taking place in the dark, the undead, the witch doctors, and then we turn north and cast a long stare across a country besieged by conflict, by decay, morally and naturally, and the stare seems to travel along the highway. But no highway crossing America reeks of such an importance as U.S. Interstate 95. But regardless of any events unfolding or the outcome or locations, there truly is only one responsible for the horrors inflicted. And responsibility dictates repercussions, good or bad. And the exasperating godliness of Washington, D.C. will not take a back stage to the comeuppance offered here. And in fact, for the way they destroyed our world, they do not deserve any better. Cheer, though, if you think you are going to win, but expect to cry if you should lose. And please hold back your false pride, your vanity, believing you have done everything right because your tears are about to fall. So to those people believing in the world's future, but have wrongly forsaken the past, the end isn't as happy as the beginning could have been.